Oh, and that's a brilliant effort. And they've turned it right around. In the space of a few minutes, Saudi Arabia grabbed control of the game.
Welcome back to the latest episode of Dawri, the Saudi football podcast. No Saudi Pro League matches taking place, as we said on the end of our last episode, but it's a special international edition as Arab nations, including Saudi Arabia, of course, took to the fields across Asia for the latest rounds of the qualifiers for the 2026 World Cup. It almost sounds incredible saying that. 2026, wow, and it will soon be here. There were some sensational results. And although Roberto Mancini's Green Falcons did not produce, unfortunately for us as fans, as usual, with me is Arab News sports editor Ali Khaled. AK, what a start to the third round of the qualifiers in the Asian Confederation. Before we bring in our special guest this week, I'm sure you're going to give us the brief and the lowdown and explain how the qualification platform works. And I need you to do that for someone like me who doesn't follow instructions very well.
First of all, Peter, we shouldn't forget. Great to be back, and thanks for the intro. We shouldn't forget that the 2026 World Cup is co-hosted by the US, Mexico, and Canada. It's the first one ever held by three nations, and the first to have an expanded field of 48 teams. So,
wow.
More opportunities for Arab and Asian teams in terms of like collective qualification, but not necessarily easier for any of them individually, because in many ways.
Ali, I'm just gonna stop you there. 1 minute 34 seconds in before you give us our first vital stat of Dawri. Carry on.
Look, if people who remember the previous qualification campaigns, less teams to go through, but there was we would end up with two groups of six, and we go forward from there. This time it's three, so bear with me on this. Let's talk about the format. It starts off simple and gets a little bit more complicated. So after the conclusion of rounds 1 and 2, we won't talk too much about that over the last year. We are now in the serious business of round 3 of Asian Qualifiers. This is made up of 3 groups of 6. It used to be 2, but now it's 3 groups of 6 that will play on a round-robin basis as usually. Simply enough, the top 2 of each group for a total of 6 will qualify automatically for the 2026 World Cup. So that's 6, of those 3, the top 2 will go through. The 3rd and 4th place teams in each group, basically the next 6 best teams, will play in the 4th round of qualifiers. This round sees 2 groups of 3, with the winners of each taking another 2 spots at the World Cup. We are now at 8 teams from the Confederation. Okay, so the top 6 from the first round, round 3, and then from round 4, the top 2 from each. But that's not the end of the story. The 2 second place teams, in those two groups in round 4, will then play each other in a playoff in round 5. And if you think the winner of that playoffs goes through, you'd be wrong, of course. There are more hoops to jump through for these teams. So that last qualifier, the last sole survivor, basically the 9th team from Asia, will then take part in the Interconfederation playoff, with 1 team each from Africa, South America, which is CONMEBOL, and Oceania, and 2 from North America, CONCACAF. So that's 6 teams. For anyone still listening, the 4 lowest ranked teams play 2 single elimination matches. The winners of those 2 will then play the 2 highest ranked teams. So this is in the Interconfederation. And then the winners of these matches qualify for the finals. So very complicated near the end. But basically, Asia is guaranteed 8 teams and potentially 9 if that last, playoff winner gets through the Interconfederation playoffs.
For people like me, that it's a mini World Cup before the World Cup.
Yeah, it's like I said, that last team that qualifies from Asia would have earned it, because, you would imagine they're not one of the favorites. They would have had potentially had to go through tough times in groups in rounds 1 and 2, finish third in round 3, go through the playoffs of round 4, and then play against all these again, tough international teams from Africa, North America, South America, and Oceania. So whoever makes it through that last would have really earned it.
I'll tell you what, people, I think what it is, Ali, is football fans and people in general don't like change, but the way you've explained that, I quite like it, and I think it's exciting. I think there's going to be some great, possibilities of some huge ties there. I think the only thing's missing is that in the latter rounds that they should have to score in the last 10 minutes of each game. Moving swiftly on from my piece.
And just one last thing, Pete. You're absolutely right in terms of excitement. And look, I mean, like I said, it doesn't necessarily make it any easier on any particular team, but we know that we're going to have, eight teams from Asia, which is obviously easily the most we've ever had, and potentially 9. So more Arab teams, more Asian teams, great for the region and all that. But individually, they still have to go through a very, very tough process.
Good. It's what we like to hear. Listen, that's all very clear and explained well. And I for one, I'm really excited. I know the people, they all moan about it's changed the format. I'm used to what I'm used to. Well, no, I for one back this, and I'm looking forward to it. Listen, what caught your eye in the first round of the games then?
So, I mean, really looking forward to having our guest who's an expert on Asian football and Arab football in a few minutes. We'll discuss in details, but there were some outstanding results, and all the main ones, the three really outstanding results were all away from home. Bahrain beat Australia 1-0 in the Gold Coast. It's an incredible result, really, by Bahrain. Fantastic start.
Wow.
Palestine, incredibly, also drew 0-0 with mighty South Korea in Seoul. And I don't think many people would have seen that. I mean, Palestine have been improving massively, but South Korea are South Korea, and we would have expected them to win. Finally, the UAE beat Asian champions Qatar 3-1 in Doha. Peter, with some of the best goals you're likely to see during this international break. Absolutely, devastating breakaway goals, or a couple of breakaway goals, but all 3 were brilliant finishes. But Qatar had taken the lead as well, So, again, not many people saw that. UAE have been improving and will continue to improve. They've got a lot of young foreign players that we discussed last week on the pod with Matt Monahan. That they've activated this campaign, this process of bringing in some young players, nationalizing them and all that, and they looked great. They they did hit Qatar on the break, but they actually dominated for long periods. Great stuff. Plenty more results, of course, involving Arab teams, including Saudi's disappointing draw with Indonesia and Jeddah, which we'll discuss with our guest.
Absolutely. What perfect timing, Ali. But again, thank you, as always, for giving us that update. Time to meet today's special guest. A Dawri favourite. It's a warm welcome back to the one and only John Duerden. John, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Pete. How are you?
Very, very well, and great. All the better for seeing you back, and looking forward, as always, because our very own sport editor Ali has a list as long as his arm of discussion points for you. So, Ali, I will let you get straight into it.
Hi, John. How are you, mate?
I'm good, thanks, mate. How are you?
I'm very well. John, we know you were watching Saudi's match last night, of course. But I'm sure you kept your eye on plenty of the other ones, so a lot for us to go through. Let's start with Group C and Saudi Arabia before we get to some of the shock results elsewhere. We'll start with Saudi Arabia and Group C. Disappointing results. We've mentioned before Indonesia are no pushovers by any stretch. But you would have still thought Saudi Arabia would have enough to win this match. And it's another disappointing result for Roberto Mancini's men.
Yes, I mean, you mentioned on paper this was the easiest game, playing the lowest ranked team at home.
Yeah.
This one, as you mentioned, I mean, Indonesia might be ranked 133 in the world on paper, but in reality they're a stronger team than that, because now it's a team mainly made up of European-based players who have been naturalised, lots of Dutch players in there. And they've improved a lot. Even so, if you look back 8 years, the start of the third round of qualification, Saudi Arabia played at home against Thailand, the Southeast Asian team. didn't play so well, but got a late penalty, scored it, won that game 1-0. Off they went and qualified for the World Cup, and nobody remembers that game very well, really. But a missed penalty last night, a similar time of the game, it means instead of 2-1, it's 1-1. And it's kind of, it leaves things up in the air a little bit. There's still 9 games to go, but certainly I think most people inside and outside Saudi Arabia would have think, that's going to be fairly comfortable 3 points, get that under your belt, you're off and running, then win at home, pick up points away, then you'll be okay. But now the pressure is on a little bit. It's 1 year since Mancini's been in charge, and as you said, this is another result that isn't great.
John, the problems for Saudi Arabia is again goal scoring. I mean, we've been talking about this for a while now, and if it seems like if Salam Al Dosari is not, scoring, they kind of struggle. They don't look like a team that's full of goals, and they haven't looked for a while. To be honest, is that the main issue you see there?
Obviously, yes. Last night, I mean, you wonder, does Mancini really trust any of the strikers? I mean, or does he know what his best strikers are? The chops and changes. He brought Al-Burikan on last night. But yes, they had problems breaking down the defence. And again, Indonesian goalkeeper, who's Dutch, really had a fantastic game, apart from giving away a penalty that he saved. He made a difference. There weren't that many clear chances either. I mean, created. There were some at the end. But it was a game actually, had Indonesia had a bit of some better decision-making in the final third, they could have won. I mean, Saudi Arabia had the better chance and much more possession, but it wasn't all one-way traffic. I think it's early days, but this was a kind of game that you just win. Doesn't really matter how you play, then you can forget about it. But when you don't win, I mean, it puts pressure on. I think now, going to China, it's a long flight. China would thrash 7-0 in Japan, which is a terrible result for them, but they won't be tired. It's going to be very, very difficult now. It's going to be a big crowd, I think, in Dalian. And Saudi Arabia need to win, I think. Otherwise, I think pressure really is on Mancini and the players. Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned in the group that China were thrashed 7-0 by Japan. A win that we expect from Japan, the very, very good team, of course, But the other big surprise, or the major surprise in that group, was Bahrain winning in Australia. What a result that was.
Yeah, I mean, they played 6 times before. Australia won all 6, and I saw some of the game. You can see from the beginning Australia had more of the play, but Bahrain always had a bit of a chance on the break, and it just shows. I mean, you mentioned earlier on, I mean, the expanded format, and there were some concerns that, having 18 teams in the final round, in the third round instead of 12, would just lead to the big teams running away with it, but that's not the case at all, apart from Japan, perhaps. So if you stay in the game at half-time, I think the fear factor has been removed from some of these big Asian teams, or Palestine in Seoul, Bahrain going to Australia, Indonesia and Saudi Arabia. They're happy with the job, but they're not going to come and just defend all the time. They will have their chances, and we saw that Bahrain deflection. But they got 3 points now and again. It makes it a bit more disappointing for Saudi Arabia in a way, because they could have gone 3 points ahead of Australia. I think their biggest rivals, probably for second place behind Japan. But again, it could have been worse. I mean, they were a point ahead of Australia, but it just shows that, playing Bahrain, it's not going to be as easy as some people thought.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been worse, as you say. Had Australia won, Australia would have taken a march on Saudi Arabia. So I think, ultimately a disappointing day for Saudi Arabia, but I think they'll count a bit of a blessing that Australia lost. John, so one of the biggest results of the day was, Palestine's draw with South Korea. Obviously, we know what's going on in Palestine, the war in Gaza. A lot of players, obviously worried about family and the friends. Not an easy atmosphere to prepare for. But this is a team that has been improving a lot, So and a fantastic results for Palestine and their fans.
Yeah, and it's the first game they've ever played at this stage. First game they've ever played against South Korea. And you think, playing in Seoul against a team full of, European stars, English Premier League stars, it should be a comfortable win. And this wasn't the case. I mean, of course, Korea should have won. Another day they would have won. They missed lots of chances. The Palestinian goalkeeper had a great game. But again, Palestine could have snatched it right at the end. You had a 1-on-1, and that was saved by the Korean goalkeeper, Joe. It was a well-organised display from a visiting team who, again, as the game went on, they grew into it, they grew more confident, and as I said, they could have snatched it, and again, it shows. South Korea really expected to win quite easily, and there's a lot of criticism and displeasure about the performance, also about other things too. But it shows that if you stay in the game, you've got a chance. And again, playing Palestine is not going to be easy. It's just unfortunate they won't be able to play at home, because that would really be, I think, make it very, very difficult for teams. But again, it shows these groups are wide open. I mean, Korea have dropped 2 points, and I talked to Korean officials. They thought they'll probably win 4 or 5 of the home games against West Asian opposition, get 1 or 2 wins away, and that'll be enough. But already that plan is not looking like it was.
Right. And of course, you mentioned the West Asian opposition. The other 2 matches in Group B were all Arab clashes. We'll start off with, Iraq beat Oman 1-0. Expected, I suppose. Iraq are a very good team these days, and they won 1-0. But the other game between 2 Arab teams as well was slightly surprising in that Jordan drew 1-1 with Kuwait, having had a really good start. The brilliant Musa Tamari scored a really, really good goal, with his left foot. And they looked like they could be on their way to another victory. But they couldn't kill the game off. Kuwait came back into it. What did you make of that match, Matt?
Yeah, I think it's another big surprise, as you said. I mean, Kuwait really squeezed into the final 18 just above India. And the Indians are very happy that the Kuwait got a good result, and they're claiming it as showing that it wasn't that bad not to qualify. They're the lowest ranked team, I think, of the 18. There are lots of problems recently, and for them to get a draw in Jordan is a fantastic result. I mean, it sets up the next game at home to Iraq. And I think, as we said, it leaves the group wide open. I mean, Iraq did what they needed to do against Oman. I think Oman played not badly at all. I think they will now host South Korea. And now the pressure's on Korea to at least go and win there, really, for all kinds of reasons. But Oman, I think, will pose them quite a lot of problems. So you see, you've got one team with 3 points with a narrow win, 4 teams with a point each, and it's very, very wide open. Especially if Korea keep that stuttering, then Jordan dropping points, who knows what's going to happen? You could have Oman in second place. I mean, with the format, one of those teams, Oman, Iraq, Palestine, Jordan, and Kuwait, are going to qualify for the World Cup, at least one. It could be 2. I mean, you never know. Yeah,
that's fun, which is fantastic news. And we shouldn't forget that because of the sheer number of Arab teams, I think potentially one of the teams that finishes 3rd or 4th, or 2 teams that finish 3rd or 4th, will eventually go through from round 4 as well. So plenty of optimism, I think, for Arab teams at this point. And one last thing.
But also in Group B with the Koreans, every window they play one game at home, and they've got to go all the way to West Asia for the away game, which can be, if you're lucky, direct flights, 11, 12 hours. If it's not direct flight, it take you a long time. And that's something West Asian teams don't have to do. I mean, that I think the one benefit for Korea is that they think West Asian teams all take points off each other, which I think is going to happen. We see that already. But I think Group B is looking very wide open. I think Iraq really should make it now. They've got home advantage as well, a passionate crowd at home. Yeah. But I think no team will want to go to Iraq needing points.
Yeah, no, that's a great point about the travel. A lot of short trips for the Arab teams against each other. But South Korea, obviously, very, very long trips there, One last point, John, is Tuesday night sees a massive game, Palestine against Jordan. It's taking place in Kuala Lumpur, I believe, because obviously Palestine cannot play their home games at home. That's a massive derby. And again, you'd imagine, both of them are sitting on a point. Just imagine the boost that either team will get from a win there.
Yeah, what a shame it's been played in Malaysia. I mean, it would be fantastic to see it played at home in Palestine. And now, I mean, predicting that game is hugely difficult. Both Palestine will be knowing that if they can get another good result, then it sets them up very, very nicely for the next window. Jordan now kind of, after the disappointment of dropping 2 points at home to, on paper, the weakest team, again, needs to go and get a result. And I think that's been a fascinating game. Unfortunately, as mentioned, it won't have a full, passionate, full house behind watching it in Kuala Lumpur, but I think those that do tune in, well, I think we'll see maybe a very tense and tight affair. I think it'll be interesting to see Palestine, a team that defend well against the bigger teams. How will they approach Jordan? A good team, but will they open up a little bit more? Yeah, it's pretty fascinating.
No, great stuff. Moving on to Group A, John, and the big game there. I mean, between the two Arab, the only two Arab teams in Group A, Qatar and the United Arab Emirates. Qatar, of course, the Asian champions at home in Ahmed bin Al Ali Stadium in Al Rayyan. Really were expected to win and took the lead as well. Great goal set up by Akram Afif, scored by Al Hassan, but the UAE were, just came back so strongly in the second half, really dominated. John, 3-1 to the UAE, big shock result of the day, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think what a devastating result for Qatar it is. I mean, a team back-to-back Asian championships, reigning champions of Asia, but have never qualified for the World Cup, and this is their time to do it. But to lose their first game at home against an opponent they would have expected to beat, will be a huge blow. I mean, again, the doubts will start to creep in because many people thought, me included, that they would qualify in the top two. But now to lose like that at home, still 9 games to go. But again, the pressure's on. UAE very impressive, and it adds extra uncertainty to the group. But now you've got 4 teams you think maybe will challenge for the top 2. Uzbekistan, they play quite well against North Korea, but quite a perfunctory 1-0 win. Iran did the same. So I think Qatar already are 3 points off the pace and go on their next match, and they have to get a result. And that's what makes it so fascinating. I think those 4 teams, I don't think North Korea and Kyrgyzstan will challenge for the top 2. But again, there's no dead rubbers because they can go for the 3rd or 4th as well. So every team will be going for it until the last few games. Qatar, it's a big surprise losing at home, and now the pressure is on them because they're desperate to get to a World Cup. They haven't done it before, through qualification, of course. Last time they played at home, they lost all 3 games in the World Cup. So to lose their first qualifier, I think, is a huge blow for them.
Yeah. A quick point on mention for the United Arab Emirates. I thought they played superbly well throughout, really, but mostly in the second half. And they've done Paulo Bento's done a great job. And you can see this team improving. I know Matt Monahan last week, again, as I mentioned, he spoke about the UAE in the previews, and he was saying this is a team that will keep improving. They've had this policy of bringing in some young players who have been nationalized, been in the UAE for a long time. And it's a young, dynamic team that looked really good. And John, just a final word on those goals. I mean, you couldn't wish to see 3 better goals.
Right, and it scored quite late on in the game as well to get 3 points in a vital qualifier. I mean, what a perfect start. And you mentioned Bento, of course, he was South Korea coach for almost 5 years. He knows Asian football very well. He had his ups and downs in Korea, but one thing he did do, the players loved him. Especially young team players coming through, he could maybe create a real family-style, club-style atmosphere. And with kind of new blood coming into the team, that could be a huge, huge bonus for UAE. And it could be 1990 all over again. Yeah.
John, I'm going to ask you one final question. I'm going to go very quickly. I mean, we don't have the time to go through every match in details from Tuesday's qualifiers, from next week's qualifiers, the second round of matches in round 3. But I'm just going to run very quickly through the matches involving Arab teams. So the United Arab Emirates will take on Iran at Hazza Stadium in Al Ain. Qatar will be away to North Korea. That's in Group A. In Group B, of course, which has 5 Arab teams in it, we will see Palestine. As we already mentioned, will play Jordan in Kuala Lumpur. Oman will host South Korea in Muscat, and Kuwait and Iraq, which used to be the biggest derby in Arab football back in the day, like a truly amazing clash. Not as much these days. Kuwait will welcome Iraq to Kuwait City. So that's in Group B. In Group C, of course, we've got we've already mentioned Saudi Arabia. So they will be playing away to China, while Bahrain, coming off that great win, will be at home to Japan. And I mean, plenty again to look forward to. As John said, it's early days, but just to finish off on Saudi Arabia, it is early days, but that disappointing results, whether, for mathematical reasons, of course, like for really very, very pragmatic reasons, but also for confidence and morale, it just becomes a really must-win game for Saudi Arabia.
And for China as well, which makes it even more exciting. I mean, China have had problems for a while, but to lose 7-0 in Japan is a massive humiliation. And the nation, the fans, this is their last chance, I think, to kind of get the fans back on board and get some confidence. If they lose to Saudi Arabia, I think it might be no coming back from China. So they'll be desperate to get at least a point. And that could play into Saudi Arabia's hands. I mean, but it's going to be a big crowd. If Saudi Arabia can take the lead, I think they can win quite comfortably. But as we said, under Mancini, there's no real settled system that you can see. And he's brought in some different players and new players. But after 1 year, it doesn't seem to improve so much. And it's going to be a tough trip. As I said, a long journey, different time zone, hostile crowd, very different conditions, a real test.
Yeah, John, fantastic having you on the show as usual, and brilliant insight. So we'll see you next time.
Cheers. Thanks very much,
John. Before you go though, John, I just want to circle back to that Saudi China fixture, because you've set it up very nicely with a must win for both, as you quite rightly say. Give us a prediction.
I knew you were going to say yes. I knew. I was waiting. I'm going to say it's going to be 2-1 to Saudi Arabia. It'll be 2-0, then China will get a late goal, but the Saudis will hold out for much needed 3 points.
Fantastic. Ali Khaled, that's how you do a prediction. I got all the information I needed there. Your turn.
Right. So last week, when I predicted 2 narrow 1-0 wins for Saudi Arabia, obviously I was wrong on the first one. I hope I'm not wrong on the second one, but I'm going to stick to 1-0. I don't, Saudi Arabia are not scoring a lot of goals, but I think John summed it up well. I said if they do take the lead, they probably will win. And they're relatively solid at the back. China will be shaky, of course. You never know how it goes with these. Will they be inspired to make up for the loss, or will they be, confidence damaged beyond repair? But I'll stick with the 1-0 to Saudi Arabia.
Well, I should also mention China have Branko as coach. I mean, the old man coach who knows Saudi Arabia very well from the last World Cup qualification as well. So, he's a wily old fox.
Definitely got that as my marker. Last word is going to go to you, Ali. It is International Week, but I think although it didn't crop up in the Asian fixtures, he certainly plays a major part of it. Special mention for our friend, Mr. Ronaldo. Yes,
Mr. Consistency. Every compliment under the sun has been thrown at him. Obviously, doing a fantastic job in for Al Nassr. Had a slight disappointing Euro, but came back strongly for Portugal to score his 900th professional goal. Unbelievable, you run out of words for this guy. Every time, you dare to write him off, and I'm one of those who've written him off like a little bit at international level, although obviously not in the Saudi Pro League. We thought like he had a massively disappointing Euro, but what a way to answer the critics. Comes back, scores another, and one of the things about Ronaldo is just we talk about his professionalism, his will to win, and just his sheer joy at scoring goals and continuing to break records. There's there's no end in sight for the records and the goals that he wants to score, which is fantastic to see.
Absolutely. Do you think he'll go for 1,000? It's going to keep going to get to 1,000, isn't he?
Yeah, he'll keep going. He'll keep going. And
3 more years.
It'll take him 3 more years, but he'll get it.
Yeah.
He will, and you know what? On that note, John, I will say that I think it's 1 more goal to reach Messi land. But one thing he won't achieve is the amount of goals. He's got a way to go before he beats Ali Khaled's 1,205 aside over the years that he's amassed. So Ronaldo's still got a little way to go on that. Listen, as always, John, an absolute pleasure having you on board for the podcast. Great to see you. Really enjoyed it. That's it. So we'll be back same time next week. Until then, whoever your team is, enjoy and see you next time on Dawri.